This has been Ingram, the Atlanta Braves Radio Network. We're here at Braves Fest Gala, brought to you by Truist. Joined by a couple of pitchers now, Chris Sale and Spencer Strider. Fellas, good to see you guys. How's the offseason been, Spencer? How's the downtime been for you the last few months?
It's been good. It's been cold. So ready to get down to Florida for sure. Start spring.
It's funny you say that. When it comes to starting things back up again, and in the middle of the cold winter, I'd imagine the pitchers are the guys who probably have it the toughest to get out there and start throwing in the cold weather and all that stuff. That's a challenge, isn't it?
It's not something you could ask him. He's got beautiful.
Smart. I live in Florida.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, I want to start with you when it comes to your preparation now versus maybe what it was 10, 12 years ago. Go back to your first 3 or 4 years in the big leagues, with the White Sox, your preparation then versus what it's like now. How much has that evolved, if at all?
It was a lot easier then. A little bit more goes into it now, I think. More just like focus on getting my body right and getting my arm right. Playing a little bit more catch probably than I did when I was younger, and taking a little bit less time off. I've noticed this repetitions is good for me. So just kind of getting my arm ready. Like the off season, I really use as the foundation for my season. So if I'm going to work on something or if I'm going to try to build something up, it's usually in the off season. Because once spring training starts, you try to get into the routine of things. And then once the season goes, you're just kind of on that 5-day schedule.
Is there a specific date? Is there any threshold of time where you say, this is the day I start every year? Or Spencer, is it a feeling thing for you?
I think it depends a little bit just on what the season was like, what your health was like, how long you've been throwing. For me, I had 13 straight months of throwing, through last season after surgery in 2024. So decided to take some time off this off season, something I probably wouldn't have done, and fully not throw for a month. So, but I kind of agree with Chris. I think it makes sense to kind of keep that muscle, trained as much as you can.
When it comes to training that muscle, can you give me like a percentage of when you get out there and start throwing November, December, what are you cutting it loose as? Is it just like a 50% thing, more than that? Do you really want to rev it up? How does that work for you?
I think it depends on how, much you let yourself lose where you were in the season. So, obviously you're coming out of the season 100%, but some guys like to throw off the mound, all the time. If that's the case, then, you won't even start building up until you get to end of December or January. You're just kind of maintaining where you were. But, I think it's hard to gauge that effort sometimes. It's just, you got to really rely on distance and mechanics and quantity and volume and that kind of stuff, and then you start cutting it January, February.
Piggybacking on something that Chris said, and then talking about how you ramp up and all that, I'd say, you tell me if you think this is a wrong assessment. I think you're as much of a self-made pitcher as there is. I think you've done such a great job of learning your body, learning your craft, what's going to make you better. How much of that goes into how you've prepared in the off season? Because like Chris said, it's like you're putting in the work in the off season to be ready for the regular season. I'd imagine you had to tinker and really go to the lab a lot when it came to how you prep in the off season.
Yeah, I don't think of myself as self-made in that way. I rely on so many people, especially now. I just think that the margins are so small between optimal and risky, and you're constantly trying to understand why things are changing and why the ball's coming out different, and why this part of your body is getting sore all of a sudden. And so now I think it's important to have tons of resources and opinions and within reason. Obviously, you don't want to, paralysis by analysis can set in. So, but find the people you trust and try to understand, how to have the best focus possible.
I want to ask you guys about something that I've always been curious about. We hear players, or we hear the league say year to year, well, the balls are this different this year. They're more this or they're more that. Is there ever a point in spring training, Chris, where you think, well, the balls are a little bit more this or that, or does it all feel the same to you?
I'm the wrong person to ask. I haven't noticed a change in much of any of it. I just, I'll play catch with my kids' little league balls in the off season if I have to. So, plus I try not to focus on that. You start putting emphasis on other things outside of like the competition and like, kind of the task at hand. It can kind of take away from, hand me a ball, whichever one you pick, I'm just going to throw it. And, try to compete.
It's with your career, the stuff that you have, and all that you've accomplished, it would be very easy to say, well, that worked last year, the year before that, the year before that, and the year before that. I'm just going to do that again. But I don't think that's quite your approach. I mean, I look at what you've done with your changeup over the last few seasons. You come to Atlanta, so obviously there's a lot of new things that surround you. What's that challenge like annually to go out there and continue to improve, even when you've had the best results of anybody out there for so long?
Yeah, you're always trying to gain ground. You never really want to stay in the same spot. You know, if you, whether, no matter if you had a good season or your best season, like, you want to build on top of that. So for me, like, I like to take things that work, but I also like to tweak things maybe I can get better at. I think, 2 years ago, I went into the offseason and, really just had to get healthy again and just kind of feel strong and have just a good offseason of lifting and just throwing a lot. And that really worked going into 24, kind of ran into some issues at the end of the year. So my thought process was, okay, let's dial back the throwing, do the same thing with the body, and then, last year just really got off to a really slow start. So I kind of recognized that I needed reps, but maybe the intensity, maybe more volume and less intensity leading into spring training. So even this offseason, I've just kind of taken some things that worked from the last few off seasons, and just try to kind of refine some of the things that maybe weren't as necessary.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned health. And when it comes to a successful team, having a successful season, playing deep into October, all that, lots of things have to come in play for that to line up. For this team specifically, Spencer, with all the things that need to happen right, how close to the top of the list is the health of the staff for 2026?
I mean, it's something that's ultimately always going to be out of your control to some degree. We try to influence it as much as we can, but there's so many variables and things you don't know. And, inevitably every team is going to have injuries, and the team that wins the World Series every year is going to have injuries, and sometimes they're going to be huge injuries. So, it's a matter of depth and having the foresight to try to piece that together, and that's beyond where we operate. So, I think, like Chris was saying, it's in our world, it's a matter of learning from what we've done and what's worked for us in the past, and trying to improve upon that.
Chris, would you say that if this rotation is healthy in 2026, that this is going to be one of the toughest teams to take down in the entire league?
No doubt. I think if you look at even just the last couple of years, I think health has been kind of a big thing, kind of on the docket, if you will. I think if you take, it doesn't matter which five, or if we use 5 or 6 or whatever that number is, if you can have everyone make it from tip to tip, I like our chances as good as anybody, honestly. And specifically from a starting pitching standpoint, there's a lot to be excited about there. So, our offense has proved it time and time again. I think if our pitching staff can stay healthy and everyone can just kind of do what they're supposed to do and just kind of do what they've done in the past, I think I like where we're at.
Absolutely. I want to ask you both the same question, so I'll let you both answer. Chris, we'll start with you. Last year, worked with a brand new catcher, Drake, who did an unbelievable job. He wins Rookie of the Year. He played like a guy who'd been in the big league 7-8 years. For you specifically, Chris, when you're working with a brand new catcher, how do you set that tone? Do you have a meeting with them? Do you like to discuss what it is that you like to do, how you like them to set up, that kind of thing? How do you go about that?
As you know, and I'm sure people have heard from the past, but I'm pretty hands off when it comes to what I want, what I'm looking for. I focus more so on like my execution and stuff like that. When it comes to Drake, though, I think what was impressive to me is, he kind of got into spring training and all of a sudden he went from kind of third on the list to like starting opening day. Had not a great month numbers wise, but you looked at some of the peripheral stuff and you're like, it's there.
Right.
For a guy that just cracks the opening day roster, rookie at the catching position, right? Never panicked, was always just kind of under control and talk about like by definition, trusting the process. You look at like his hard hit rate. It seemed like, 5 or 6 times a series, he's hitting a ball 108 and it was right at somebody, catching on the warning track, line drive to the shortstop, whatever it is. And he didn't deviate from the script. He kind of stuck to who he was and what made him successful and just kind of trusted the process. And that's not easy to do at any level, any age. I don't care what the experience is. You can have 20 years in the big leagues. When you don't have success, you can start kind of doubting yourself. But knowing that you're doing the right things and you'll see it through was big for him.
Yeah, what he did last year was incredible. Cannot wait to see that growth. Spencer, for you, working with a new catcher, how do you communicate exactly what you're looking for? How particular are you with your catchers?
Yeah, I think it's a personality balance in some ways. I think everybody has their own competition style and their own kind of emotional baggage when they get onto the mound, and I certainly do as well. And so Drake is just such a selfless, calm, positive, person that whether things are good or bad, it always feels like he's fully invested in you as the pitcher, and that tandem between the two of us. And he's just so like curious and intelligent and wants to take risks and isn't afraid to challenge you. And it is really impressive. I mean, he's not that much younger than me, but that the guy, for having as little experience as he did, just jumps right in and had to be in some pretty difficult situations, in your first major league season, and just to handle it as well as he did, it's extremely impressive.
I want to ask you, too, about one more guy before I let you go, that's Spencer Schwelenbach. What's the ceiling for this guy? Do we even know yet? How good could he be?
Yeah, it's pretty high. I mean, he's unbelievably talented, unbelievably intelligent, works extremely hard, wants to get better, wants to compete, wants to win, and then he's still learning so much about himself, just hasn't been pitching still that long, which is something, a great thing in some way, because there's still so many gains to be made, and he knows that, and he wants to pursue it, and he's a great teammate, fun to be around him.
I think that's the most exciting part, Chris, is knowing how short of a time he's been pitching and what else we could see from him.
For sure. I think I would say maybe not intelligent, but I'm actually just kidding
might
on
watch
that.
this.
Yeah, I hope he does.
Yeah.
No, but when it comes to being a student of the game, he's as good as anybody I've seen. Being able to kind of use the old school, like just go out there and compete, and some of the new school analytics stuff, he's really good at that. On top of, he's very athletic, which helps him on the mound, obviously. But you don't see very often guys with his kind of stuff, right? I mean, you're talking about a guy that can potentially kind of live in that upper 90s to triple digits with his fastball. Has a handful of pitches that he can throw for strikes at any given time. Generally, when you there's some give and take with pitching, and it seems like he doesn't have to give a whole lot for what he has. So, again, I mean, if he just kind of stays on the track he's been and stays healthy, it's going to be very exciting to see.
Fellas, it's great to see you guys. Thrilled for this upcoming season and thrilled that you're both Atlanta Braves. Can't wait for it.